I didn't realize my daughter was saying goodbye until the house started feeling emptier while she was still living in it. The morning it first hit me, I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing a coffee mug that's still from college, and the light through the window had that pale, early softness that makes everything feel forgiving. I heard her footsteps behind me, light, careful, like she didn't want to disturb the air. "Mom," she said, and there was something in her voice. Not urgency, not fear, something quieter. I turned around with the mug still in my hand. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile people use at funerals, polite, restrained, meant to keep things from falling apart. She leaned forward and kissed my cheek, lingering just a second longer than usual. "I love you," she said. I laughed a little. "You're going to be late for work," I told her. "And you just saw me last night." "I know," she said. I just wanted to say it. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Mothers don't question "I love you." We collect those words like pressed flowers, tuck them away, assume we'll have more later. I watched her grab her bag, straighten the framed photo of us on the hallway table, an odd, unnecessary gesture, and walk out the door. The door clicked shut. And for the first time in 22 years, the sound felt final. Before all of this, our life was ordinary in the way that feels invisible until it's gone. My husband, Mark, had been waking up at 5:30 every morning for as long as I could remember. The coffee maker was his domain. He liked things strong, bitter, no sugar, said it kept him honest. I teased him that it kept him grumpy. He teased back that I married him anyway. We'd raised our daughter, Lily, in the same modest house with the creaky third stair and the back porch that never quite stayed level. She was our only child, the center of our gravity. From the outside, we probably looked like one of those families people assume are uncomplicated. No shouting matches in the driveway. No police cars. No dramatic estrangements. Dinner was usually at 6:30. Meatloaf on Mondays. Pasta on Wednesdays. Takeout when everyone was too tired to pretend we cared. Lily would sit at the table scrolling through her phone, half listening to her father talk about work, chiming in now and then with something about her job or a friend's engagement or a show she was watching. Smelled faintly of cinnamon. The radio was on low, humming some old song I half remembered. She was 22, living at home for now, she'd said. Saving money. Figuring things out. I liked having her there more than I admitted. The sound of her laughter drifting down the hallway. Her shoes kicked off by the door. The way she'd steal the blanket from the couch and wrap herself up like she did when she was little. There were mornings I'd pass her room and pause just to listen. The soft hum of her fan. Music playing low. Proof that she was still there. If there was any tension in the house, it was the kind that comes with loving someone you can't protect forever. Mark worried about practical things, her career, her savings, whether she was settling. I worried about her heart. Whether she felt safe. Whether she felt seen. We didn't argue about it. We rarely argued about anything. That's what makes it so easy to miss the cracks. You assume silence means stability. The changes started small enough to dismiss. Lily began coming home later than usual, claiming traffic or extra hours. She started cooking for herself, carefully labeling containers in the fridge. She donated clothes, good clothes, to a local shelter, folding them with almost ceremonial care. Once I saw her standing in the living room, looking at the walls like she was memorizing them. "Everything okay?" I asked. She nodded too quickly. "Just tired." She began calling relatives she hadn't spoken to in months. An aunt in Ohio. Her grandfather. I overheard pieces of those conversations, laughter that ended too abruptly, long pauses, the soft seriousness people use when they're choosing words they won't get to take back. Mark noticed too, but in his own way. "She's growing up," he said when I mentioned it. "You wanted her to be independent." "I wanted her to be happy," I replied. He kissed my forehead. Same thing. I wanted to believe him. The first time I felt real unease was a Saturday afternoon. Lily was cleaning out the garage with a focus that felt misplaced, almost urgent. She handed Mark a box of old school projects and childhood keepsakes. "Can you hold on to these?" she asked. "I don't really need them anymore." Mark chuckled. "You'll want these someday." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but not right now." I stood there, wiping my hands on a dish towel, watching my daughter give away pieces of her past like she was lightening a load. Something in my chest tightened, slow and deliberate. That night, after she went to bed, I asked Mark if he thought she was planning to move out. She mentioned something, he said casually, scrolling through his phone. My heart skipped. Mentioned what? Oh, just that she's been thinking about next steps, he said. You know, life stuff. He didn't look up. And I didn't press. That's one of my regrets, how often I didn't press, thinking patience was the same as trust. Over the next few weeks, Lily's goodbyes became more frequent, though they never used that word. She hugged me longer, thanked me for small things, laundry detergent, advice, childhood stories I'd told her 100 times. She took pictures of ordinary moments, the dog asleep under the table, the way the light hit the porch at sunset. One evening, she stood in the doorway of the kitchen and watched me cook. You're really good at this, she said softly. At what? I asked. Making things feel like home. I smiled, unaware of the weight behind her words. You'll do it your own way someday. She nodded, eyes glistening just enough that I noticed, but not enough that I understood. I told myself it was a phase, a mood, that growing up is a series of quiet separations, and this was just another one. I was wrong. And I might have stayed wrong longer, might have kept mistaking her careful goodbyes for growing pains, if my husband hadn't said one careless sentence over dinner that changed everything. The sentence slipped out of my husband the way truths sometimes do, without intention, without armor. We were sitting at the dinner table, plates half finished, the quiet kind of evening where no one is really hungry. Lily had already gone to her room, claiming a headache. Mark was talking about something ordinary, work deadlines, a client who wouldn't return calls, when he shook his head and said, almost to himself, I still don't know why she thinks leaving like this is the kindest way. I froze. My fork hovered midair. Leaving like what? I asked, keeping my voice even, careful not to startle whatever fragile thing had just surfaced. Mark looked up, surprised. There was a flicker in his eyes, confusion first, then something like regret. I thought you knew, he said. The room seemed to contract. The ticking clock on the wall grew loud, insistent. Knew what, Mark? He leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly. She asked me not to say anything yet. My heart began to pound, heavy and uncoordinated. Say what? He hesitated, rubbing his thumb along the edge of the table the way he does when he's deciding how honest to be. She's planning to go. Soon. She's already made arrangements. The words landed wrong, like furniture dropped in the dark. Go where? Mark glanced toward the hallway, then back at me. Out of state. She's been accepted into a program. Long-term. A program. Long-term. My mouth felt dry. When was she planning to tell me? He swallowed. She said she didn't want to hurt you. Thought it would be easier if she just eased out. I pushed my chair back and stood, the room swaying slightly. Eased out. I repeated. Like smoke. Mark reached for my hand, but I stepped away. Not because I was angry, because I was afraid that if I touched him, I would break. All those moments replayed themselves at once. The extra hugs. The careful donations. The photos. The thank yous. They rearranged themselves into a shape I couldn't unsee. She's been saying goodbye, I whispered. Mark nodded. In her own way. I don't remember walking down the hallway, but I remember stopping outside Lily's door. The light underneath was on. Music played low, something soft, nostalgic. I knocked once. Mom, she said. Her voice held that same careful brightness. I opened the door and saw her sitting on the bed, surrounded by half-packed boxes. Neatly labeled. Thoughtful. Final. The air left my lungs. She looked up, eyes widening. You weren't supposed to. I sat down beside her, hands trembling. How long have you been planning this? She closed her eyes, just for a second. A while. And you were just going to disappear? Her shoulders slumped. I was going to tell you. Eventually. When? She shook her head. I don't know. When it felt safer. For who? My voice cracked. For you, she said immediately. I know how you get. You worry. You hold on. I didn't want to watch you grieve something that hadn't happened yet. Tears spilled over then, uninvited and unstoppable. So you decided to let me grieve after? She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked softly. She wiped her face, frustrated. I'm not running away. I'm choosing something. For once. I looked at my daughter, the woman she had become, and saw fear braided tightly with resolve. You could have chosen it with me, I said. Not without me. She stared at the boxes, jaw tight. I didn't think you'd let me. I laughed then, a small, broken sound. I let you learn to walk. I let you fall. I let you drive away the first time, remember. This is different, she said. This changes everything. Yes, I agreed. That's why it needed honesty. She reached for my hand, gripping it like she used to when she was little and thunder scared her. I love you, she whispered. That's why I did it this way. I closed my eyes, breathing her in, her shampoo, her familiar warmth. Love doesn't mean leaving people in the dark, I said. It means trusting them with the truth. We sat there for a long time, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. When I finally stood to leave, I paused at the door. Promise me something, I said. She looked up. What? No more quiet goodbyes. She nodded, tears shining. I promise. But promises don't erase patterns overnight. The days that followed were tense, tender, and filled with conversations that felt like walking barefoot over glass. Lily explained the program, what it meant, why it mattered, how long she'd been dreaming of it. Mark apologized for keeping the secret, his guilt heavy and sincere. And I listened. I really listened, because that was the only way forward. Still, the ache lingered. Friends noticed something was off. My sister asked why Lily seemed so reflective lately. I gave vague answers, unsure what was mine to share. Lily continued her careful preparations, now more openly, but the habit of soft exits clung to her. One afternoon, I found her writing letters at the kitchen table. Are those for me? I asked gently. She smiled. One is. I sat across from her. You don't have to leave pieces of yourself behind to go somewhere new. She considered that. Maybe I just don't want to forget where I came from. The truth, I realized, was that her leaving wasn't the betrayal. The silence was. And silence, once it settles in a family, has a way of teaching everyone how to live smaller until someone finally speaks. After the truth came out, nothing exploded the way movies promise it will. No screaming. No slammed doors. No dramatic ultimatums. Instead, the house grew strangely polite. We began treating each other like fragile glass, careful where we stepped, careful what we said. Lily moved through the rooms with a new openness, but also with caution, like someone who knows the map has changed and doesn't yet trust the ground beneath her feet. Mark tried to fill the silence with practical talk, budgets, timelines, travel logistics, anything that could be measured and solved. And I watched. I watched my daughter fold clothes with too much precision. I watched her reread emails, her finger hovering over the screen like she was afraid the words might disappear. I watched her laugh with her father, then glance at me to make sure I wasn't breaking. What surprised me most wasn't that she was leaving. It was how long she had been preparing to do it alone. One evening, long after everyone had gone to bed, I stood in the hallway outside Lily's room again. This time, I didn't knock. I leaned against the wall and listened. She was on the phone. I know, she said quietly. I just didn't want to hurt her. A pause. No, she doesn't know everything. Just enough. I stepped back before she could open the door. The words everything and enough echoed in my chest like unfinished sentences. The next morning, I made a decision, not out of anger, but out of clarity. If my daughter had learned to protect herself by shrinking her truth, then somewhere along the way, I had taught her that love came with conditions. Maybe not intentionally, maybe not consciously, but enough that she believed silence was kinder than honesty. That thought hurt more than her leaving. So instead of confronting her again, I chose a different approach. I invited her to do the most ordinary thing I could think of. Come grocery shopping with me, I said over breakfast. She blinked. Now. Yes. Now. She hesitated, then nodded. The store smelled like ripe fruit and floor cleaner. We walked the aisles slowly, pushing the cart together like we had when she was little and insisted on riding in the seat. I let the silence stretch. I didn't fill it with questions or advice. Finally, she spoke. I didn't tell you everything, she said, staring at a display of apples. I waited. I applied to 3 programs, she continued. Only one was out of state. I didn't think I'd get in. And when you did? She exhaled. I panicked. Because wanting it felt like betrayal. I turned to her then. Wanting more is not the same as leaving love behind. She nodded slowly. I know that now. But I didn't then. We finished shopping in a quieter understanding. No resolutions. Just honesty beginning to breathe. That night, Mark and I talked longer than we had in years. I thought I was helping, he said, staring at his hands. She asked me to keep it quiet. I didn't want to break her trust. You broke mine instead, I replied gently. He winced. I know. Silence settled between us, not the heavy kind this time, but the thoughtful kind. I need you with me on this, I said. Not managing it. Not smoothing it over. With me. He nodded. I will be. The next few weeks passed in a strange rhythm, half preparation, half mourning. Lily told extended family about her plans. Reactions varied. Pride. Concern. Thinly veiled jealousy. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone wanted reassurance. And Lily handled it with grace I hadn't expected. What she didn't expect was how the truth would ripple outward. At a family dinner, my sister said, "So that's why you've been acting like this is goodbye season." Lily stiffened. I wasn't. It's okay, I said, placing my hand over hers. We're not pretending anymore. The room went quiet. Later, my mother pulled me aside. You must be heartbroken. I am, I admitted. But I'm also proud. She nodded. Those things can live together. What surprised Lily most was how people leaned in once they knew. Friends she'd been. Distancing herself from showed up with advice, support, even silly gifts meant for her new apartment. She cried more in those weeks than I'd seen her cry in years. I thought disappearing would be easier, she said one night, sitting on the porch with me. But being seen, it hurts differently. Because now it's real, I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm scared. So am I replied. That's how I know we're doing it right this time. The day she finalized her departure date, the house felt charged, like the air before a storm. Mark tried to joke. I tried to stay busy. Lily retreated into herself. That evening, she handed me an envelope. I was going to leave this behind, she said. In my room. I didn't take it right away. And now? Now I want you to read it while I'm still here. Inside was a letter, pages of careful handwriting, full of apologies, gratitude, fear, and love. She wrote about feeling like she had to be strong alone. About not knowing how to ask without disappointing us. About learning too early that independence sometimes gets praised more than vulnerability. When I finished reading, my hands were shaking. I never wanted you to be alone, I said. I know, she whispered. I just didn't know how to be brave with you. I pulled her into my arms, holding her the way I did when she was small and the world felt too loud. The truth had cost us comfort, but it gave us something sturdier in return. Once the letter had been read, something shifted in the house, not toward peace, not yet, but toward honesty that no longer asked permission. The countdown began quietly. Lily taped a calendar to the refrigerator, marking days with a thin blue pen. She didn't cross them out dramatically. She just added small notes in the margins, call housing, pack books, coffee with Maya. Each mark felt like a small click of a clock I could no longer slow. I told myself not to hover. I told myself this was her life, her courage. But mothers are historians of routine. We notice when mugs go unused, when footsteps fade earlier than usual. I noticed everything. One afternoon, I came home to find her sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by photo albums. The old kind. Thick pages. Plastic sleeves that stuck slightly when you turned them. She looked up and smiled. I'm sorting. For what? I asked. For remembering, she said. I sat down beside her. We turned pages together. Birthday candles melted crooked, missing teeth. School plays where she stood too stiffly in costume. Her finger lingered on certain pictures longer than others. Do you remember this day? She asked, pointing to a photo of us at the lake. She was maybe 10, sunburned, stubborn, grinning like she'd conquered something. You cried when it was time to leave, I said. She nodded. I always cry at endings. I studied her face. And yet you keep creating them. She didn't argue. She just closed the album and leaned into me. That night, after she went to bed, Mark confessed something else. She asked me months ago, he said, voice low, what you'd do if she left. I turned to him slowly. And what did you say? He hesitated. I said you'd survive it. But that it would hurt more than you'd admit. Tears stung my eyes. You could have told me she was afraid. I know, he said. I thought I was protecting both of you. That's the thing about protection, I replied quietly. It can become a wall. The week before Lily left, the truth reached places I hadn't expected. A neighbor stopped me at the mailbox. Your daughter's moving away, she asked, concern wrapped in curiosity. Yes, I said. She didn't say goodbye to me, the woman added, almost accusingly. She didn't know how, I replied. At Lily's farewell dinner with friends, I watched from the corner of the room as she laughed, hugged, accepted well wishes. But every time someone said, you'll be amazing or you're so brave, her smile tightened just a little. Later, as we loaded dishes into the sink, she said, they think I'm fearless. What do you want them to know? I asked. That I almost left without saying anything because I was afraid they'd try to make me stay. And would they have? She thought about it. Maybe. Or maybe they just wanted to be part of it. That's usually what love asks for, I said. The night before she left, the house refused to sleep. Mark paced. Lily reorganized her bag for the 10th time. I stood in the kitchen at midnight, making tea no one asked for. Finally, Lily came in and sat across from me at the table. I need to say something, she said. I waited. I thought leaving quietly would make me strong, she continued. But telling you the truth, that scared me more than moving ever did. Why? I asked. Because silence made it feel reversible. Like if it hurt too much, I could pretend it wasn't real. I reached across the table and took her hands. Real things hurt. But they also heal. She nodded. I know now. We talked until the sky began to lighten, about everything and nothing. Childhood memories. Mistakes. Things we wished we'd said sooner. When the sun finally rose, we were exhausted and strangely calm. The morning she left, the house held its breath. Mark carried her bags to the car. I handed her a container of food she didn't need. She hugged the dog for too long. At the door, she paused. This isn't goodbye, she said. I know, I replied. But it's still an ending. She smiled sadly. Thank you for letting me say it properly. When the car pulled away, I didn't wave. I stood there, arms wrapped around myself, and let the quiet arrive honestly. The days after were harder than I expected, not because she was gone, but because she was gone without secrets. There was nothing left to decode, no hidden meanings to uncover. Just absence. We talked every few days. Short calls. Longer silences. She told me about her apartment, the unfamiliar sounds at night, the way independence felt heavier than she'd imagined. I miss you, she admitted once. I miss you too, I said. But I'm glad you didn't disappear. Weeks later, I received a message from her. I told someone today how scared I was. And they stayed. I stared at the screen, tears falling freely. Because that was the real consequence of the truth. It didn't just change how she left. It changed how she lived afterward. Life did not rush to fill the space Lily left behind. It waited. The first week after she moved, I kept catching myself setting an extra place at the table. I folded laundry and paused at the sight of a familiar shirt, my hands hovering as if it might still be warm. At night, I listened for her footsteps without realizing I was doing it. When they didn't come, the quiet felt louder than any argument ever could. Mark tried to help in the way he knew how. He fixed things around the house that didn't need fixing. Tightened cabinet hinges. Replaced a light bulb that still worked. Rearranged the garage shelves as if order could stand in for comfort. One evening, I found him sitting on Lily's bed, staring at the bare walls. She used to talk to me when she couldn't sleep, he said without looking up. About everything. Her fears. Her plans. I leaned against the doorframe. She didn't stop needing you. She just stopped knowing how to include us. He nodded slowly. I keep thinking, what if I'd said something different? What if I told her you'd understand? What if doesn't help, I said gently. Listening does. Now. He looked at me then, eyes tired but honest. I want to do better. So do I replied. That was the quiet work that followed, the rebuilding not of a relationship with our daughter, but of the habits we'd formed around silence. Mark and I began talking about things we'd always skirted around. Our fears of being left behind. Our confusion about when guidance becomes control. The way love sometimes hardens into expectations without meaning to. One afternoon, while cleaning out Lily's closet, I found a notebook tucked behind a shoebox. I hesitated before opening it. Old instincts whispered that some things weren't mine to read. But then I remembered how secrecy had almost cost us everything. So I opened it. Inside were pages of lists and half-written letters. Questions she'd asked herself. Doubts she'd never voiced. One sentence stood out, underlined twice. If I leave quietly, maybe they won't feel abandoned. I sat on the floor and cried. Not because she was wrong, but because she had learned that lesson somewhere, somehow. And I couldn't stop wondering how many times I'd encouraged independence without pairing it with reassurance. How often I'd praised her strength without asking how heavy it felt. That night, I called her. I found something of yours, I said carefully. There was a pause. You read it. Yes. Another pause. Then, softly, are you angry? No, I said. I'm grateful. For what? For knowing what you were carrying. She exhaled. I didn't want to sound ungrateful. You didn't, I told her. You sounded human. Something shifted in her voice then, relief, maybe. Or permission. As weeks turned into months, Lily's life began to take shape in its new setting. She talked about her classes, her roommates, the way the city felt both exciting and lonely. She didn't edit herself as much anymore. She admitted when she was overwhelmed. When she missed home. When she felt proud. One evening, she said, I almost didn't apply for a leadership role because I didn't want to stand out. And what did you do? I asked. I applied anyway, she said. I told myself I didn't have to disappear to be kind. I smiled into the phone. That's my girl. Meanwhile, word of her departure and the way she'd nearly left in silence circulated through our extended family in bits and pieces. Some people praised her bravery. Others questioned her choices. A few made pointed comments about kids these days. At a family gathering, someone asked me, wasn't it hard letting her go? I answered honestly. Harder than I imagined. But harder still would have been losing her trust. They didn't quite know what to say to that. And that was okay. The real public consequence wasn't scandal or shame. It was awareness. Conversations shifted. Cousins began talking about their own quiet plans. Their own unspoken fears. One young relative pulled me aside and said, I've been wanting to move too. I just didn't know how to tell my parents. I told them, start with the truth. Even if your voice shakes. Lily noticed the change too. I didn't realize how much silence I was surrounded by, she said once. Not just mine. Truth has a way of echoing, I replied. The healing wasn't dramatic. It was slow, uneven, deeply ordinary. It showed up in small moments, shared jokes over the phone, honest disagreements that didn't end in withdrawal, the absence of that careful politeness that once filled our house. Mark and I found ourselves laughing again, not because things were the same, but because they were clearer. We missed our daughter fiercely, but we didn't feel excluded from her life. One weekend, Lily came home for a short visit. She stood in the doorway, bag over her shoulder, eyes scanning the familiar space. It looks the same, she said. It is, I replied. And it isn't. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for not holding my silence against me. I kissed her hair. Thank you for trusting me with your voice. That night, as she slept in her old room, the house felt full again, not with presence, but with connection. No unspoken goodbyes. No careful exits. Just honesty, finally allowed to take up space. And as I lay awake listening to the familiar hum of the house, I understood something I hadn't before. Letting someone leave doesn't mean letting them go. Sometimes, it means teaching them they don't have to vanish to be free. After Lily's visit, The house settled into a new kind of rhythm, one that didn't try to imitate the past or rush towards some perfect version of healing. It was quieter, yes, but not hollow. The silence no longer felt like something hiding between us. It felt earned. Mark and I began doing small, intentional things together. Walks after dinner. Coffee on the porch in the early morning. Conversations that wandered and circled instead of marching toward solutions. We talked about Lily, of course, but we also talked about ourselves, about the years that had slipped by while we were busy being steady. One night, as we washed dishes side by side, Mark said, "I think I confused being calm with being clear." I looked at him, hands submerged in warm water. "I think a lot of us do." He nodded. "I thought if I didn't stir things up, everything would stay peaceful." "And instead?" I asked. "Instead, things went underground," he said quietly. "That became our language for it, underground. The place where feelings go when they don't feel safe to surface. The place Lily had been living in for months, maybe longer. We promised each other we'd stop sending things there. Around that time, Lily called me one afternoon, her voice shaky. "I messed up," she said. My heart tightened. "Tell me." "I missed a deadline. I didn't ask for help soon enough. I thought I should be able to handle it." I sat down at the kitchen table. "What did you do next?" "I told my supervisor the truth," she said. "I didn't explain it away. I didn't pretend it was fine. And she helped me fix it." There was a pause, then a small laugh. I kept waiting for the disappointment. "Sometimes it doesn't come," I said. "Sometimes people surprise us." "I think I'm learning that," Lily replied. "But it's uncomfortable." "Yes," I said gently. "Growth usually is." As months passed, her voice changed. Not louder. Not braver in the way people like to label. Just steadier. Less rehearsed. She spoke without that careful editing that used to filter every sentence. One evening, she asked, "Do you ever wish I'd stayed?" The question landed softly but deeply. "I wish I could have protected you from fear," I said. "But I don't wish you'd stayed small." She was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for saying that." The truth continued to ripple outward in ways I couldn't have predicted. At a community event, a woman I barely knew approached me. "I heard about your daughter," she said. "About how she almost left without telling you." I braced myself, but her eyes were kind. "My son did that," she continued. "Moved across the country. We didn't speak for years. I wish I'd known what he was carrying." I didn't know what to say, so I listened. "I'm trying to do better with my younger kids," she said. "Your story helped." I went home that night thinking about how private pain becomes public instruction without asking permission. How vulnerability, once shared, stops belonging to just one family. Lily noticed it too. "People ask me how I knew I was ready to leave," she said once. I tell them I didn't. I just knew I couldn't keep disappearing. That word, disappearing, had lost its grip on her. On the anniversary of her move, she sent me a photo. It was of her standing in her small kitchen, sunlight slanting across the counter. On the wall behind her hung a framed picture of our old porch at sunset. "I didn't leave home behind," she wrote. "I brought it with me." I stared at the photo for a long time, my chest tight with something that felt like pride and grief woven together. That night, Mark found me sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in my hands. "She's doing well," he said. "Yes," I replied. "And she's still ours." He smiled. "I think that was my fear. That letting her go meant losing her." "I know," I said. "Mine too." We talked about the way parents are taught to measure success by independence, by distance, by proof that children no longer need us. And how wrong that measure can be if it forgets connection. "Needing isn't weakness," Mark said slowly. "It's communication." I squeezed his hand. And communication is what keeps people from leaving in silence. The truth, I realized, was that Lily's secret goodbyes hadn't been a rejection of us. They were a misunderstanding about love. She had thought love required minimizing her impact. We had unknowingly taught her that being strong meant being quiet. And together, we were unlearning that lesson in real time. One afternoon, she called me with news she'd been waiting to share. "I got the position," she said. "The leadership one." I laughed, tears springing up. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," she admitted. "And excited. And visible." "Good," I said. Let yourself be seen. I am, she replied, even when it shakes. When I hung up, I went into the backyard and stood where Lily used to sit on the steps, legs stretched out, dreaming out loud. The air smelled like cut grass and summer heat. Ordinary. Grounding. I understood then that the story I'd been telling myself, about a daughter leaving, about a family almost fractured, was incomplete. This was also a story about staying. Staying with the truth. Staying in the discomfort of honesty. Staying present even when the instinct is to protect by retreating. Lily hadn't just learned to say goodbye properly. We had learned to listen before the goodbye ever had to happen. And that lesson, once learned, doesn't end with one child or one family. It keeps moving. Would you like me to write the closing audience reflection? Yes. I used to think the hardest part of being a mother was learning how to let go. I was wrong. The hardest part was learning how to listen before silence became my daughter's safest language. When I look back now, I don't blame Lily for trying to leave quietly. I understand it. Somewhere along the way, she learned that being strong meant not needing too much. That love was something you protected by shrinking yourself around it. And I had to face the uncomfortable truth that, without meaning to, I helped teach her that. What saved us wasn't confrontation or control. It wasn't rules or reassurance or pretending everything was fine. It was honesty, spoken late, imperfectly, with shaking voices and open hands. My daughter didn't need permission to leave. She needed to know she didn't have to disappear to do it. And I didn't need to hold her tighter. I needed to make space for her truth. Families don't usually fall apart because people stop loving each other. They fall apart because love stops feeling safe enough to speak out loud. Silence grows where conversation should have been, and by the time we notice, the goodbyes are already packed away in boxes. If you're listening to this and thinking about someone in your life who's grown quieter, more distant, more careful with their words, please don't wait. Ask the hard question. Listen without fixing. Let the truth land, even if it hurts. Because staying connected is never about keeping someone close. It's about making sure they never feel they have to leave alone. Would you have handled this the same way I did? Or would you have done something differently? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story spoke to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today.